I'm Brian Foster, and this is the Grindhouse Institute. On each episode of this podcast, Jeremy Floyd and I program a triple feature movie night. Each of the movies share common themes, and we discuss them here. We're happy you could join us for today's block we call Christmas Noir. The holidays are here, and the Grindhouse Institute is celebrating by taking a look at some Christmas movies. But it wouldn't be the Grindhouse Institute if we simply brought you a block of White Christmas, It's a Wonderful Life, and Miracle on 34th Street. No, today, with a very special guest, we'll be chatting up 3 film noirs all set during the Christmas season. On Christmas Eve night in New Orleans, a singer at what can only be described as a hostess bar tells a soldier a sad tale of her marriage to a convicted serial killer and his twisted relationship with his mother. Gene Kelly plays the heavy in this one. Film noir perennial Robert Siodmak directed, and Herman J. Mankiewicz penned the screenplay for 1944's Christmas holiday. Joe Miracle Mirakowski returns home to San Francisco only to find that while he was fighting overseas in World War II, his nightclub had been taken over by the mob and his partner is missing. After reclaiming money that is rightfully his, he hides out in a local settlement house, but with the cops and the mob after him, his time is nearly up. Glenn Ford, Evelyn Keyes, and John Ireland star in Mr. Softtouch from 1949. In a small town just west of Chicago, Roger Phillips is found dead of an apparent suicide. Hot on the case is Sam Donovan, an insurance investigator who's not convinced. Dennis O'Keefe and William Bendick star in Cover Up from 1949. Thank you so much for listening to the Grindhouse Institute. Happy holidays, everyone. Please enjoy.
Hey, Santa Claus.
What's going on here?
Roadblock. They're searching the cars again.
Say, why don't you take the night off?
Thanks, I had the whole year off.
With pay.
You talked me into it.
All right, welcome back to the Grindhouse Institute. I'm Brian Foster. With me, as always, is Jeremy Floyd. Hello, and how are you?
Hey, how's it going? I'm getting in the Christmas spirit here.
Definitely. We have a really fun block that leads us right into the Christmas time. I don't know when this will be released. How close to Christmas? Is this going to be a Christmas release?
Basically, yeah. I think, the Monday before Christmas.
So apparently it's going to be Monday before Christmas that you're listening to this right now. So fantastic. We have a very special episode, as per usual, and a very special guest. Jeremy, would you like to do the introduction?
Yeah, so I thought, for our Christmas episode, we would do a kind of a different type of Christmas movie. I mean, often we stick to a certain, darker type of film that we review. And this one is no different. We got kind of a blending of Christmas movies and film noir movies. And I actually am a huge fan of film noir, but I have never heard of Mr. Softtouch and Cover Up. I guess I had heard of Christmas Holiday, but had never seen it. But I was made aware of them off of one of my favorite Instagram accounts, the OnlyFilmNoir, run by Alex Vlahov. Alex, welcome.
Welcome.
Thank you so much, both of you. Appreciate you saying that you discovered those from the page. That means a lot. That's awesome.
Yeah, for sure.
Jeremy introduced me to your Instagram account, and I've been all over it. It's great. I was telling you before, it's got such a great consistent look across even the neo-noir. Like you said, you still bring it back into that classic black and white.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it. Yeah, it started just as something to do, for fun. It's almost to kind of just log all the films I was watching and, just as a personal reminder. But yeah, it's kind of turned into something bigger. Yeah.
Awesome.
No, that's important too, especially getting into genre films, particularly film noir, which is like a really odd genre that's like hard to classify. Unlike, maybe a horror or comedy or something, it is a genre that wasn't aware of itself while it was happening.
Right.
And only became a genre later.
Right.
And so, sometimes it's it's hard to remember, where did that one come from? Where did this line come from? I remember this moment, but was that in this one and that one? I mean, especially with some of these more obscure ones. I mean, obviously the Maltese Falcons and Double Indemnities and things like that are all pretty well set in your mind. But some of the lesser known film noirs are, it's good to definitely log them down, in some capacity. And it's funny that that's how you started your page.
They all blur together at a certain point. I mean, they definitely, there's the ones that stand out, whether they're just bizarre or it's a favorite. But yeah, Billy Wilder really loved to push back against the idea of the film noir genre. He was like, that's just a term that the French critics use for the films we make. I think it came about in the late 40s, maybe 1946. So, I mean, I'm not very hard and fast. Some people are like 1940 to 1960,
Right.
or some even say 1958. Right? I think that setting such strict parameters over something that isn't even an established genre it's kind of silly. But yeah,
No, for sure. It's a weird, it's definitely a film critics thing to do. And it's so loose a term that, like a lot of things can fit into it. But when you see some of these movies, they do sort of adhere to some of this stuff. I mean, like,
yes,
at the time, I think most of them were just considered melodramas, right? It's like, there's high drama that's like Macbeth, and it's about, kings and the great people and whatever else. And there's melodrama, which is sort of classically about, sort of regular everyday people and the dramatic things that happen even in their, boring lives, right?
Yes.
And that's kind of what these movies are, but they kind of focus on crime. Mm-hmm. It was like, all of this stuff kind of happens after the Hays Code goes into effect. Before the Hays Code, you could have gangster films where, the gangsters triumph in the end, right? After the Hays Code, you can't do that. Everyone has to be sort of punished. They have this like moralist bent to them. And you have things like a lot of German expats coming to the States, refugees. And with that came a lot of their sort of like, the expressionism, all that kind of stuff. Like
yes.
the very classic lighting and everything you're thinking of. Some of the nihilism that's in it because of like just some of the horrifying things that generation of, German immigrants had experienced, both with sort of World War I, the Depression, and possibly persecution for being Jewish, and in a lot of these cases, like Billy Wilder, for instance.
Yep, you're absolutely right.
And so anyway, all that stuff like kind of creates a melodrama that is a lot darker and more pessimistic in a lot of ways, but everyone's sort of wise to how things are sort of horrifying. But they're trapped in it. There's nothing they can do about it. It's just that is what life is, and it's a certain sort of dark way of looking at things. But what an interesting contrast to the Christmas movie. It seems like it would be a total oxymoron to say Christmas film noir movies, but I think these three in particular all were very conscious that Christmas was a part of what they were doing, without sort of damaging that noir, sort of mindset.
Why don't you, Alex, introduce what the movies are and why you put them together?
Oh, sure, absolutely. And I was going to say, there is a thread. You're absolutely right. There is a thread through these films that was, the label noir was a helpful, almost like nomenclature. It's like taxonomy. You need to give it a name on a chart, right? It has to... right. There is a through line in these films.
We all know that feeling, and now it has a name. Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. And it's like, if it wasn't going to be a period film or like a big musical, then it did become a melodrama. A lot of them have this seedier undertone, which you're also right, contrasts with the idea of a holiday film. The three that you've selected are three of the best, as far as I'm concerned. I did a really deep dive last year for the page, and I'll just go through them. You got
Please.
Mr. Soft Touch from 1949. And also from 1949, you have Cover Up. Mm-hmm. And finally from 1944, you go back a bit for Christmas Holiday. So just want to say that these are really fun choices. I think of the three, the first one it's kind of arbitrary, but I think I like Mr. Soft Touch the most out of the three.
Mm.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, it's kind of a toss up right now between Cover Up and Mr. Soft Touch. Mr. Soft Touch I just like because his name's Joe Miracle. And it's got like all these really cool moments in there. But I really like his story a lot, and I just love how he goes in, steals his money back, has his money stolen back from him, goes and steals it again, and then gives it away. And it was just like this really cool sequence. I really liked it.
There's a part that actually made me laugh out loud. It's when he gets taken away. His brother's ringing the bell. That's why the cops come up. And he realizes it's convenient having the cops there, so to have them take him away, he starts ringing the bell. And he says something like, when I get started, I can't stop ringing that bell.
That does it. I don't know what's the matter with me, Sergeant, but when I get the urge, I've just got to ring that bell.
It's almost a kind of a modern comedy moment Glenn Ford is doing.
It felt very much like that, yeah.
Well, and Glenn Ford, like, just a perfect sort of noir icon, Gilda and like the big heat.
Oh, yeah.
It's like, and he has some like great lines in this one too. But yeah, it's funny, like Mr. Soft Touch in particular, I felt like was hard to find. I think someone put it up on YouTube recently, but I had to like buy the DVD to like find it.
I found it on some strange streaming service, but I had, a ridiculous amount of commercials in it. But it was, at least it was free, and it was
probably bootleg, yeah, exactly. Usually when you can't find a movie, it's for kind of a good reason. It's like the movie just like, doesn't connect, and, it's not very good. But I was pretty surprised, with like how much I really, really liked Mr. Soft Touch. I think, probably out of the three, that was probably my favorite. I mean, to your point, Brian, I really did like Cover Up as well.
Cover Up was really good, yeah.
But I think it was the Reservoir Dogs one. But Andy was talking about how like sometimes we were talking about like John Payne, right? And it was like sometimes you get the sort of noir hero that doesn't quite quite connect, and that's what I feel like it was with Dennis O'Keefe a little bit. Like he was good in it and everything, but there were certain like hero shots and like sort of hero moments that like weren't landing properly, just because of he didn't have that sort of star quality that someone like Glenn Ford could have, or whoever.
I feel you on that. Yeah, I concur. But he still had that great look, that hat, the suit, and when he'd come in and smoking cigarettes one off of another. Right. It saves time.
You smoke too much, one cigarette after the other.
Yeah, I know. It saves a lot of time.
You try smoking a pipe instead of all those cigarettes.
Well, I'll let you in on a little secret. I've got some stock in a cigarette company.
He's also a horrible detective. That's the thing about Cover Up. He's like an insurance salesman collector who it's like right under his nose. It's like the dad, right? But and then the false that just puts so many people in danger, putting out that false thing in the paper. He's so slow, and he keeps missing these. But so, I mean, not only is Glenn Ford more suave, but, O'Keefe in the other film just has a dumb character, kind of. Yeah.
Well, I mean, he's definitely very driven, but I guess part of it was that, he didn't want it to be
right.
The dad of the woman he was interested in.
Totally.
So, he got his emotions involved, which is something you can't do in the film noir world.
Not on the job.
That reminds me of Heat for some reason, the whole, you got to walk away line he has,
Yeah,
I mean...
Yeah, exactly.
I think about that quite a bit.
Right, Brian?
We've gone through 3 episodes of me talking about how I still haven't seen the movie Heat.
You know what? It's been so... I hope it hasn't been ruined for you. When I finally saw it, it was like, man, people were telling me it was like the best movie ever. I liked it. I liked it a lot, but it definitely didn't... It could never live up to this, Phantom De Niro Pacino film that I came up with in my mind.
All right, Alex, well, it was nice having you on the show. It's too bad we have to cut you short.
We don't take things personally here, though.
Yeah.
I gotta tell you, though, the weirdest thing, the Mr. Soft Touch, Evelyn Keyes and Glenn Ford had an affair in real life. Ford had many affairs with many co-stars. I believe like a one-night stand with Marilyn Monroe. I mean, his Wikipedia page is pretty interesting. They made 6 movies together. This is the only noir. There's like a Western in there. There's some drama, some light comedy.
Right. I guess, he's probably mostly known for Westerns, right? I mean, Ford.
Seems it. I mean, I think back to obviously 310. There's another great one about him searching for silver out in Arizona. I can't remember the title, but I mean, he certainly was very dexterous, kind of going between genres, and And she married John Huston later in life at one point, and then
wow.
Artie Shaw. She had a pretty interesting personal life too. So
Yeah, I really grabbed onto the Mr. Soft Touch story. I don't know why that was, and I think it might have been just because it was such a great lead that had the good looks, had like that suaveness, but also it was funny. There were some cool, the dice game was a really cool scene to kind of get into that he's a complete, he's got that whole like suave thing about him, and he's kind of hits every note.
Oh yeah,
and it's really, I thought that was fun to watch.
Yeah, and he's in the film noir world, like he's like the best positioned to navigate it, as in he's wise. He knows all the angles, all those kids, all those street kids are
So
trying
funny.
to hustle him, and he's like, nope.
He took their Christmas tree money.
Blow on him, warm him up.
They're warm enough, shoot.
Y'all through, fellas?
We can't lose that money. It's not ours.
You should have thought of that before you started.
It's for the Christmas tree, okay?
For the party.
Yeah.
What's so special about a tree? The woods are full of them.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, he was he got his sister-in-law to get him a ticket out of town, and he didn't know where he was going. He looks at the ticket.
Japan.
He's like, Yokohama.
Yeah.
It's like, well, I guess we won the war, didn't we? Guess we gotta go see what
Gotta
we
go
won.
check that out. That was a funny line.
I mean, he had some great lines in this one. And then like he had hidden money in a trash can, and like he gives a wad to his sister-in-law, and she's like, no, I can't take it. He's like, come on, take it. It's only garbage.
well, this film does kind of a funny thing. There's this weird thing that so many noirs do, which is they'll be like kind of socially progressive and then just step right back, right? So like you have like Evelyn Keyes, who by the way I really like. She pops up in a lot of noir. She has like a disability. She's hard of hearing, and then like the film sort of extols the virtues of social services. Even the cops are very cynical, like social services. So like that's kind of cool modern awareness. But then you have things like, oh, he only beats her because he loves her, like wife beaters. Aren't you a wife beater? Like, yeah.
No, but they did say something like wife beater's the lowest form of human or something in there, right?
This is what I mean. So then it'll like go double back on itself and like be kind of progressive again, and then it's like, and then you remember she's like falling for him, the plot is, she thinks he's a married wife beater. So it just kind of, it always like one step forward, two steps back with these movies sometimes,
Yeah, no, it's true. And,
1949 too,
It's 1949, but it is also like that aspect of it was really interesting. Like the, what do they call it? The settlement house, a thing that, just doesn't exist anymore. Certainly not in the way that it's portrayed in the movie. And something that like seems to be a leftover, or like its most robust time must have been during the New Deal, which we're kind of just edging out of right now in 1949, about to get that all the brakes slammed in the 50s. But this time period where that some of those things were still exist. You were seeing that like there was that whole theme of like he came from the gutter and wasn't going to die in the gutter, and part of him sort of redeeming himself from perhaps some of the things that happened off screen that we weren't privy to, but were probably that he was doing some shady shit. All that stuff he was trying to redeem himself for, basically with the him trying to like save this settlement house and have his sort of like. What do you call it? It's a Wonderful Life moment at the end. Like he was the entire town basically. But since we've got the old Hays Code here, no good deed goes unpunished in a film noir.
Absolutely. And his brother, it says his brother was ground up and part of the freeway now. I mean, whatever life he comes from, that's a rough world,
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and it wasn't really clear. Like, so he basically had to run away and join the army because they got into some trouble that was not specified, I think. And then, he and his brother own that club. His brother then gets, ground up into a cement mixer or whatever.
Into street.
And
yeah,
I think it's all the stuff I really love about film noir. It's like, there's a lot of, sort of criminal underworld dealings, but, it's fun and it's funny. And the sort of twists and turns and the character reveals of it all happen at sort of a breakneck pace. And we even sort of learn, some more about him as he's going along. It's like, he's not as sort of callous as he seems to be at first glance type of thing. And it's funny because this movie in particular seemed to have fallen off everyone's radar. And right up until sort of the last minute and a half, essentially right when he gets shot, it's like right up until that point, you're like, oh, okay, well, why isn't this sort of more of a Christmas movie that people are aware of, right? It's like, it has the happy Christmas ending. And it's like, oh, wait, there it is. Never mind. He gets blown away.
Well, question though, did he get blown away or did he just get shot? Because he was still talking at the end, right?
That's what made it sound kind of confusing.
It's left undetermined.
That's left undetermined, right? That's an open-ended.
He gets air hold, and then she comes over to him, and he's like, "Wait, to make sure I don't die in the gutter." The end. Let's cut away before he actually expires. Yeah.
So my mom was watching that one with me. Had to share that one with her, and at the end, all I heard her go was, really disappointed, incredibly disappointed that she didn't get a closure on that. But. What do you guys think? I mean,
I think he died. I'm going to be honest, just because it's keeping with noir.
That's how it works. Yeah.
Yeah, no, but also just the being gunned down in the Santa suit, man. That is such. Yeah. That's like Christmas.
It's pretty
noir.
dark. Yeah, it's true. Yeah.
That's Christmas noir right there.
That's perfect for this episode. That's the visual iconography of that.
Right.
It's,
yeah. But let's go back to Christmas holiday. We haven't really even touched on it at all yet. Mm-hmm. But this was far and away much different than the other two from 1949. This felt like a totally different film. But it had those elements, somewhat of a femme fatale, those things from film noir. But I'd love to hear your take on this. It seems like just an interesting film. It wasn't my favorite of the three, I have to say.
Wasn't my favorite either, and really wish it was on paper. As weird as that sounds to say. You got Deanna Durbin, who's trying to break her image as the girl next door. Deanna Durbin, this was her highest-grossing film. And she actually left acting in the late 40s and moved to Paris. So it was one of those rare studio stars that kind of left still famous and just never came back. Lived a very content life. So it had kind of an interesting personal life. Obviously, Gene Kelly, who was still trying to find where he fit. He was in Pal Joey already, but he didn't really have. He wasn't Gene Kelly as we know him, right?
Right. He wasn't an American in Paris or Singing in the Rain or whatever. It's
Right. You got Robert Sidmack before he did The Killers, and most interestingly, you got Mankiewicz, who has the film about him coming out soon. I found a story. Mankiewicz was fired from writing the screenplay by Universal because he was always drunk on the set. But apparently he walked into the head of Universal's office. I don't have the name here, but he said something here, Felix Jackson. He said to Felix Jackson, "Don't you think Herman Mankiewicz drunk is still better than Dwight Taylor sober?" And Taylor was the guy they brought in. That's so cocky, but it worked because they rehired him, and he was very proud of that screenplay. And also Deanna Durbin said it was one of the films she was most proud of. A lot of the people were it's very literary. I mean, it's based on a W. Somerset mom.
No, exactly. I mean, just the crazy flashback structure made it feel pretty literary. It's think of how little time we spent in the sort of present, which is basically Christmas night and then day after Christmas. That is that's the present. Everything else is just a flashback.
Mm-hmm. Framed. I mean, I guess right. It's framed. Yeah.
You could say. Double indemnity.
Up till you get to the church, right? Up to the midnight mass, and then right after that, he invites her over to his hotel, and that's the end of the present up until the very end of the film.
The very end is when we enter the present. Yeah.
They might come back once or twice, but
they have a really long section of flashback. They kind of come back, and then we go into some more flashback, and then we have the sort of resolution there at it's kind of a brothel. I mean, it wasn't kind of clear. It was like this.
Yeah, I mean, The only thing I really wanted to say, and it was nothing too serious about the movie, was that just Lieutenant Charles at the very beginning of the film, he all of a sudden is in the friend zone with this woman that he sees, and she seems to be a very attractive, very talented woman, and I just felt bad for him from the get go, because he was just there to really tell, or for us to hear the story, right? I mean, he didn't really have much other purpose.
So that's the weird part. It's like, it starts off with him. He gets that telegram. You're like, oh man, that sucks. And then
sad.
The telegram's like, hey, sorry, I married someone else.
Yeah.
Hope you stay with me in your heart always.
Yeah.
Smell
I
you
wish
later.
you the best.
And so you think it's going to be about this guy, and then he meets what was her name? Abigail, or
Jackie. Abigail. Yeah.
In this sort of seedy bar, or perhaps whorehouse in New Orleans. It seems like that's what they wanted it to be, but they couldn't say it.
It was in the source material. It's a Paris brothel.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
And she is
because at the very end she's like, no, I wanted to put myself in this prison and do these crazy things because I wanted to be just like you, having a terrible time, and assuming that her being a sex worker would be the thing where she'd be, putting herself in that same position. I mean, that's kind of what it seems like they were going for, even though they weren't saying it exactly.
And it's funny. I mean, the New Orleans location change really does work. I was lucky enough to go back to New Orleans last year for a wedding right before this all happened in the nick of time. And I remember I was going around this there's this local history museum in the French Quarter, and I don't know why this stuck with me, but I saw this this book that they would leave at bus stations and train stations. And it was an address book of all the sex workers in New Orleans. And this would have been 1910.
Oh, wow.
Oh yeah. And then there was it was divided by race too, because it was also, 1910.
Right.
But
right.
It had the address and a couple of very short-listed things of what they specialize in. So it's super, imagine seeing that in a train station now, or
right.
Welcome to New Orleans, right? These are available in barber shops and salons. So
I guess it was Vegas.
Yeah, the guy's flipping you
flipping the cards,
Yeah. Right. So I think that the change, I think that it's like a nightclub or roadhouse, but I think it's kind of implied what her occupation is.
Yeah, I thought it was a jazz club.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, that's the way it's kind of presented as a really sort of classy whorehouse, I guess, in a way. But it's it seemed like she was just there to keep the gentleman occupied or whatever, and that was sort of the most innocent reading of what that was. But anyway, the bar was really fascinating, and also it seemed like that sort of sleazy reporter guy.
Yeah.
He was just there to rope people into the bar. That was his whole game he was playing. But they kind of tried to make him more of a character.
Because for some reason, Minette went back to him when he broke out of jail. He was his lifeline back to Jackie, right? Or Abigail.
Mm-hmm.
You see this character a lot, in Noir, a sort of friendly fixer who does some comedic quips, but is sort of beloved by everyone, and they usually get
he's
shot.
sort of Danny DeVito in LA Confidential type of thing.
Yeah,
Sid Hutchins. Yeah,
that's an accurate. I mean, they usually end up being the victim, but I love that in this he kind of ends up helping save Rap all that. And that actor is he pops up in Yankee Doodle Dandy. I don't really know him from that much else though. He's a good actor though. Richard Wharf, that's his name.
Yeah, I liked his character. Kind of added a little bit of color to the scenes.
Oh yeah. And again, you have the mom, the collusion of hiding the pants reminded me a bit of Cover Up. Just
yes.
Yeah, same thing.
Yeah.
The incinerator.
Mm-hmm.
Totally. The lighting on fire also having an excuse for covering up the crime, which is basically men will never throw out old clothes, and you have to rely on the women in their life to do it for them, type of thing. It's and the way they get rid of it is just to burn it.
Yeah, exactly.
God, there's something else I was going to say about that. Oh no, never mind. It was something that related to Mr. Soft Touch, which is essentially the sleazy, scheming newspaper man, which is he was the fixer in Christmas Holiday, and he was also, you know, the catalyst for a lot of the sort of violence and stuff that happened in Mr. Soft Touch. The what was his name? John Ireland character, Early Bird, that guy.
John Ireland, interesting guy. Very famous for dating women in Hollywood that were like crazy younger than him. Like I think he dated Tuesday Weld when he was 45 and she was 16. So John Ireland, interesting personal life. There's a moment of, and also, but I also just watched a noir with him in it. All the King's Men. With the election recently, I was like, I'll watch a political noir, and I posted about that, and he's the star of that. So I was like, where have I seen him recently? And that was
right.
There's a moment.
He definitely has that face where it's like, depending on what point in time you see him or what kind of costume he's in, he's like, God, who is that? You know,
kind of morphs, yeah. And there's a line in Christmas Holiday. I don't know if you guys caught it, but this character Simon kind of does like a double entendre to the lieutenant. He says something. I wrote it down. He says about Deanna Durbin. He says, "Of course, if you feel like giving Jackie a little tip or something, well, see you later, Lieutenant." And I just thought, okay, Mankiewicz isn't gonna like put that. No writer at the time is gonna put in a line. If you're gonna give her a little tip, squeeze past the sentence. Come on, I mean, yeah. So, yeah.
Just a little tip, yeah.
I mean, for 1944, that's a very, I mean, you know, it's crass as hell, but it's great for 1944, yeah.
Totally. They did have some good ones in there. One I had written down was like...
He's quite drunk, isn't he?
Not for him. He's been drinking himself into the gutter for a long time. They're running out of gutters.
Yeah.
So good.
There's a moment at the end where I love when Gene Kelly's sort of unshaven and you see him drop the whole G shucks off facade, you know?
Right.
When he like leans into Deanna Durbin and her eyes widen, and it's like my favorite. That shot it's probably my favorite moment of the movie. Though.
Is that the eye light, the soft eye light that hits her at the end there?
Yes.
Is that what you mean? Yeah.
Well, right before that,
on the reverse, where it's his face, and it's like that's really hard shadow, and it's funny, like with the sort of extremely German expressionistic noir sort of lighting here, he has this like scar on his cheek that you sort of never see in the more fancy like musicals or whatever, but like in this one they're kind of playing up his dangerous look maybe, when you saw him unshaven, man, he looks so different than he does normally with his sort of like very chiseled jawline and everything else that you see him in his very pretty made up look that he normally has in musicals, which was also fascinating. Like seeing him kind of play against type, seeing him be pretty but also be scary, also his relationship with his mother had a very interesting connection, I think. And the way I was kind of seeing this movie, maybe this will make it more interesting to you, Brian, is that like Christmas Holiday is what you'd get if Norman Bates' mother had lived, right?
Oh, interesting.
It's like keep her like helping him like cover up his crimes and everything else. She's really obsessive and whatever, and like tries to loop in the Deanna Durbin character, Jackie or Abigail, and tries to get them to change him or like fix his like serial killer mindset. And so it was this very sort of pathological relationship, and one that was like, it seemed like a very, very what do you call it, like a proto Norman Bates character.
That's very interesting. Yeah.
And particularly like when you think of like how Psycho was done, like the movie, not the book, which he was like kind of like a more like what Ed Gein was like, kind of a fat and Leatherface kind of guy. In the movie, it was Anthony Perkins, right? And so Gene Kelly, Anthony Perkins, like it's like ooh, the really handsome guy next door, very thin and unassuming and charming and whatever else, but also a psycho killer.
Yeah.
Well, there's a really interesting comparison. The one thing that that kind of illuminated for me their relationship is the sense of faded glory or like lost privilege in a way.
Yeah. Also Psycho. Yeah, a little bit too. Yeah.
Well, they do come from. I didn't realize that was Psycho, or I guess I didn't make the connection because Psycho, they just seem so hard scrabble, right? With like the roadside motel, it seems
kind of, but I think they say it's like Norman's mother second husband or something was wealthy, and that's why he had that Victorian mansion at the top of the hill, and convinced them to build the motel below, and he was clearly well off enough to not have any customers and like not have a problem, so he's not like hard scrabble in that sense. You're
actually right. That moment comes right at the very end in that exposition moment of Psycho, right? Where the cops explain
some of it's
everything.
with the sheriff too.
Okay.
No, it doesn't matter. But yeah.
No, it's all good. I kind of forgot that. You're absolutely. I mean, you're right. Why could they sustain themselves for so long without any customers?
Yeah, we just did a show on Psycho and the Ed Gein trilogy.
Is it? I guess it's Silence and Texas. Nice.
Yeah,
perfect.
You got it. Yeah.
I didn't realize the whole thing with his brother, that he his first victim was his brother, way before the stuff with the mom or the other ladies in the town. I think he only killed 3 people, the 2 ladies and then his brother.
Ed Gein, you mean? Yeah.
Ed Gein, yeah. And he was a babysitter at one point. I don't know if you guys knew.
We should have had you on, because Adam didn't have any information on Ed Gein.
Adam forgot to do his homework, even though that's what he says he loves to do. But
we'll definitely bust his chops about that one.
Last podcast on the left, I just read their book.
Oh, yeah. Those guys are great.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. But the scar, I just did research, a.k.a. Google.
Sure.
Gene Kelly had the scar from a tricycle accident. He was thrown in Pittsburgh from his tricycle, and he lurched forward onto an exposed piece of cast iron. The metal went through his cheek, causing a deep gash. I've noticed the scar too, but I've never really questioned it or thought about it. So it's interesting.
Yeah. Well, it's just that the lighting really highlighted it. They
punched
in this
it up.
one.
Yeah.
And it kind of he's like there's this dangerous side to him, type of thing. But yeah, you're talking about with the connection to sort of Psycho and the Manette family having sort of near royalty status before the U.S. was even a thing.
Right, exactly. And there's also this interesting. This happens a lot in studio films of money coming down to swoop the poor, impoverished character. You see this time and time again. I mean, Pygmalion, where they kind of become into training is an older plot form of it, but yeah, their privilege is very pronounced. I found it interesting that the mom ends up becoming I think the live-in housemaid of a family in New York. I mean, this we're seeing the end of a dynasty with this film.
Right. Yeah, it's
interesting.
Dwindling embers of a dynasty. Yeah, and then disgraced the family name by by being convicted of murder. Which is funny, they spent a long time messing with the trial and all this, but they didn't really show what the evidence was. I mean, he acted guilty as hell, but how did they convict him?
It's super fast, man.
Didn't they also get they did get a recount though, I believe.
Don't worry about it. Yeah, exactly.
They did.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, we're still guilty. Still guilty.
Yeah. Yep. Guilty. Yep, he was.
Really noticed the score in that moment when they went the strings of guilty, plunk, guilty, plunk.
Yeah.
The score was nominated for an Oscar, which was the only nomination for this one.
Wow. Kind of surprised. I mean, some of this. I think all 3 of these movies had some of that stuff where it was you're really noticing the time period here where it's the themes weren't particularly memorable. A lot of the scoring was very Mickey Mouse, where it's if someone moves,
especially in Cover Up. Cover Up did that a lot when he shake and it would go. Yeah. Little flute sounds.
I like my version better.
Sorry, we'll use that in the edit.
Oh, damn it. But yeah, it was fascinating. It's it kind of you're right, Alex. On paper, this movie seems like it would be the best. I mean, it's Gene Kelly playing a bad guy. Written by Mankiewicz, directed by Robert Siodmak, and it's an unexpected film noir. Also takes place in New Orleans, which is kind of. I mean, when you think of film noir, it's it's L.A., San Francisco, New York, and then the rest. It's everything else is sort of the rest.
There's a great Elia Kazan noir in Panic in the Streets.
Oh, Panic in the Streets. Yeah.
That's a good New Orleans noir. There's a couple others, but
that was a good one to watch back in March.
Exactly. That one was crazy relevant when this all happened. Yeah. And there was another one. I mean,
we'll compare that one with The Crazies or something.
Oh man, that would be perfect. That's actually a perfect pairing. There's a Cronenberg that I just watched, Shivers, that also deals with an outbreak in an apartment. That's
an old one. That's one of his first ones.
I prefer his. I mean, I know this is so what I like his older ones. You know.
No, yeah, totally.
That's yeah.
I like his stuff before he went electric.
Exactly. When Cronenberg went electric, the Newport Folk Festival.
Unplug, David. Unplug.
Well, first of all, they were like, "What are you doing here?" But his son's movie too. I'd love to see Possessor. Yeah, I'm waiting on that one. Yeah,
I want to see that too.
Yeah.
I want to talk about Cover Up real quick, and I think I want to go back to what you were saying, Jeremy. The score. This one felt more animated than the other films, and almost like it was like a crisper picture. You know, it wasn't as like dark and contrasty as these other ones, and it kind of had this more of a lighthearted tone, and it really wasn't violent in any way. We didn't get any like murders or killings on screen or any
to the point where it was weird, where it was like, you know, like speaking of like sort of the violence and whatever else, like everyone in this town hates this guy.
This is Hot Fuzz.
How can this be for the greater good? Shut it!
This is a whole town conspiring, right?
Yeah. It's God. What's the Agatha Christie?
I have Agatha Christie written in my notes. It's either I think there's a couple of them where it's like everybody's
Murder on the Orient Express was what I was thinking of.
That's
But it's like that's where I thought it was going. Like immediately when the bus driver like gleefully announces that this guy was killed or he killed himself. Roger Phillips.
Better off dead.
Yeah. It's like, whoa, wait, did you say suicide? Because you smiled afterwards. Like, that was weird.
Yep.
So obvious.
Like, Roger Phillips is dead. Everyone in the town hates him. It's this tiny little unnamed Midwestern town somewhere west of Chicago.
Yeah, outside of Chicago.
Yeah. Brian wouldn't know anything about that. And the crazy part was that, like, everyone says that he's better off dead, but we don't know why exactly. He's like, okay, well, here's the damning evidence. Oh, we never got it. You know, it's like, you know, this guy deserved to die, and you know, and everyone kind of agreed, nodded their head. Yep, he did deserve to die. But why? Why did he deserve to die?
We never know, right?
Know. And the why is kind of a big deal. Like that
yes.
will either explain like, hey, everyone's doing the right thing or everyone's doing the wrong thing, and more likely, everyone is doing the wrong thing. They kind of had the Dark Knight ending where it's like, no, we can't possibly tell the truth about this. Everyone has to be lied to all the time.
Right.
Yeah, there's a lot of... it's so funny you say that. So many Hollywood films do that and sort of opt for the let sleeping dogs lie, you know? Even though... I mean, in a weird way, Some Like It Hot ends in that way, where it's very different, but it's accept the given reality and let's all move on, you know? It's almost not a noir, this film. It is, but it teeters the sort of merriment of it's like Mr. Soft Touch too. Mr. Soft Touch is also like a romantic comedy, and it has. I read this article that compares it to like the work of Damon Runyon, who his short stories became Guys and Dolls. If that gives you an idea of like his style and flavor, big loud characters. I mean, not to go back, but all those kids in Mr. Soft Touch are basically out of Archie. You know what I mean?
Yes.
They're like
Jughead's hat?
Yeah, they're like city caricatures of like wise guys, you know? With Cover Up, you have this like...
That piano store is not a piano store.
I think it's a front, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Or the kid like whispering him to take bets, you know, on the ladder.
Yeah.
Cover Up has like... Okay, so here's my thing with Cover Up, is that weirdly... It might be the most relevant of the three right now, only because here's my thing. So a lot of my friends, you know, I've worked in, I have a background in theater and I work in comedy and I have a lot of musician friends too. I have all these friends that like depend on like live entertainment, and they aren't working right now. You know, some of them have moved home. A lot of people during the coronavirus during the pandemic have moved back home. People in their 20s, well into their 30s, sometimes even 40s. I mean, who knows one's life circumstance, but like, I think this film might connect with people in a more direct way this year because the sense of like going back to a small hometown, maybe finding, I don't know, like new details about the people there. I don't know, the idea of almost like a hometown fling for some people, the being there for the Christmas tree lighting when you normally would never be, like a bit more of like a quieter atmosphere. I think there's a lot of people that will watch this thinking, oh, this is analogous to something I'm going through. That's just maybe millennial. That's just my theory.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And that's an interesting idea too. I remember thinking something similar to that. I mean, it's like, although I did have that thought more so in Christmas Holiday, where it's like, when you see the sort of multi-generational household with Abigail and her mother-in-law. But yeah, it's same deal here in Cover Up, where what was her name? Anita comes home and sees her younger sister, her dad, her mom, and then like her like I guess their housekeeper, who is more or less their mom.
She's the best of Alice, and from the Brady Bunch and the Wicked Witch, and she's got it all. Like, she was so awesome, and she had such a great comedic timing as well.
Right. Well, and her, like, the housekeeper was very much like the mother role in Christmas
the
Holiday, cleaner, where it's like covering up the tracks of this person that she cares for, including like burning clothing. But yeah, it's wild because in this one you're right. Like, there is a lot of relatable stuff with people having to move home and whatever. But it's interesting. You see this small town atmosphere, which is usually the type of thing that film noir usually takes place in, like a city, and when characters are in a small town, it's because they are escaping something from the city,
right,
and having to be sort of pulled back into it. But here we're having this mystery and all the detection and all this stuff happen in a small town, and it's made a big deal of that it's a small town versus what Chicago is as a big town, a big city and whatever. But it's crazy how many sort of like references this film has to other sort of classic film noirs or pulp stories, I guess. Like just the fact that it was Marlowe County. It's like named after perhaps named after Philip Marlowe.
I didn't even make that connection. That's a great shout. That's a great. I love that. Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah. Multiple times they talk about because the main detective is an insurance investigator. Mm-hmm. He is essentially Keys from Double Indemnity, and they keep talking about the Double Indemnity clause.
They say it multiple times.
That they're like trying to investigate in this one.
The cop, by the way, William Bendix, who looks like an airbrushed Ed O'Neill.
Yeah,
maybe that's just me, but he's great. He's great in like Lifeboat. He pops up and stuff, but yeah.
He was my favorite part of this movie.
Yeah, he's the best actor.
Like, what was it? The Blue Dahlia?
Yes.
The movie written by Raymond Chandler, who then that made the Black Dahlia nickname.
Right.
Like it sort of came from that movie. And the other like last thing was like the guy's name was Sam. I guess looking up in the credits I saw what his last name was, but like at the time I was like, they kept calling him Sam, and I was like, oh, it's Sam Spade, or is he maybe they're gonna call him Sam Diamond or Sam Club, because Sam Spade's already taken. But yeah, it's funny how like there were a lot of little connections to other film noirs, even though I don't know what film noir wasn't a known commodity like we were talking about earlier.
Well, Double Indemnity, which was, I believe, earlier 40s. I just want to get the year right. I want to say 42, but 44. That was such a hit that, like, I'd imagine the only reason film-going audiences at the time would have known about the Double Indemnity clause is from that film. So
totally.
I think that there is, actually, I wrote here, I think that there is some cashing in on this thing that has come prior that the audience would be hip to. It's almost like a shorthand.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's a good call. That's probably what it was. Because Big Sleep was famous with Bacall and Bogey, and so that's you get Marlowe, and then Double Indemnity, of course, which is probably one of the most film noir films, where it's like it's a sort of the film noir. It's and what's crazy is this guy in particular, the Sam character, is Walter Neff in reverse, as opposed to him trying to like conspire to commit a crime. He's trying to unravel one.
Mm-hmm.
Although in the end, he just decides to conspire to to suppress the crime, or what's it called, cover up the crime. Cover up. Hey, there you go.
Does he decide then to stay because Anita is there and he's already fallen for her? They've fallen for each other. Does he decide to stay at the end?
We don't know. I think they just kind of walk out and they're like, "Yep, we're done here."
Because he kept saying, like you mentioned, that he kept talking about how Chicago, he's a city guy. He's in a small town. He's a city guy, and I didn't know if he made that change. I think that would have been a nice closure there, but I don't think we got that.
I'd imagine it's implied that he's found his his love of the time, and he'll settle in nicely into this. I mean, it'd be interesting if he leaves because he's got shit on the town,
Yeah, a lot. Yeah,
right. Exactly. Well, and also, like, where was Anita supposed to be coming from? I mean,
yeah,
she was
same
shopping.
place. I'm assuming
She was shopping in the big
she was
city.
just shopping.
Remember, she had all those boxes.
Chicago. I see.
Yeah.
But it's not like she was coming home for Christmas. It was like, she just went out to go shopping.
I thought that's
right?
what they said. I thought she was coming home and she had the boxes from wherever she was.
See, that's a really good point. I don't know if she lives in Chicago. I got the idea that she doesn't live at home. I might be wrong,
Right.
but that's just what based on the interactions, it doesn't seem like she was like leaving town to go into Chicago to shop, and maybe she lives elsewhere. I don't know.
Because her sister seemed to haven't seen her for a while, and it seemed like they were reconnecting.
Yeah, no, exactly. Like it seems like she was, living out of town and then coming back, after having maybe shopping and going shopping in Chicago. But yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I'd say of all these, the two of them obviously had a lot to do with Christmas. But Christmas holiday, outside of the day of which this all happened, that was the only Christmas we really get from that one.
That was it.
But with Cover Up, obviously Christmas night is a very important thing. He's working all Christmas night. There's presents involved, and then in Mr. Soft Touch, I mean the whole ending of the film is about saving the settlement house through a donation from Santa Claus.
Right.
So
and. Making those kids' dreams come true.
Yeah,
with,
exactly.
Some Grover Cleveland's.
I forgot about that line. That was good. Grover Cleveland.
Could you tell us whose face is on a $1,000 bill?
Grover Cleveland.
It's O'Keefe, the Dennis O'Keefe pushed for the Christmas setting. Apparently, the producers were not going either. Like, it's too seedy. You're combining Christmas with a noir, or with a Christmas with a sort of a detective story. And the actor stood his ground.
Mystery.
And the filming was delayed because they still couldn't make up their mind. But he, as okay as he is in this film, I got to give it up to him for. That's the reason it exists in a way.
No, exactly. I mean, he's like, he's good at it. He delivers the lines well. I just think, for me, it was like mostly just some of those moments where like he's supposed to give that look, and it's just like it's not firing. It's like it's not quite there.
Right. He's a little wooden.
Yeah.
Yeah, I still thought he was a pretty good lead guy. Just probably not the sharpest of noir characters.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, he's got good lines. Whenever I'm just saying, like, yeah, it's like his screen presence wasn't always as sharp and as like all knowing as you'd want him to be. The way that Fred McMurray was in Double Indemnity, for instance, or
I thought the sheriff took over that movie by far. Like his presence was so strong. Like every time he was in the shot, that's all I could see. And every time he was even in a shot with another person, I was just kind of on him, and he just had a really cool way about him. Really liked that actor.
Me too. He's famous for a Babe Ruth adaptation that I've.
Okay.
I think he starred in like a Babe Ruth biopic, but before the John Goodman one, obviously. But I've never seen it. I've only Lifeboat is how I first saw him, and that's why. Good to see him again.
Yeah, Lifeboat, Glass Key.
Yep.
Those are the ones that Blue Dahlia. Those are the ones that I knew him from.
Oh, and Blue Dahlia, I always forget. Yeah.
The monkey music. He's that guy. I know this is kind of a non sequitur for Cover Up, but I really, really love that shot where, I mean, we were talking about how like the, cinematography isn't quite as noir as some of the other ones. But there was one shot in particular that I really, really loved where it's like Anita goes to return the Luger back to sort of the doctor's house. Sam comes in, finds it facing the wrong way and kind of figures it out. But as he's sitting there playing with the Luger and deciding what to do, we see Anita sort of hidden behind the door, but we see her reflection
in the mirror,
in the sort of like painting or whatever, the glass of the, I don't know what it was, a print or something that they had on the wall. And like, just the staging of that was so awesome, and you could like get her reaction shot at the same time as like what he's up to, and like and kind of have that that moment all play out in the sort of medium shot like that. Which is funny because I was like, oh man, the staging. It made me think about the staging in this movie and how like the staging is really good, and then at the very end they sort of ruin it when they have the sheriff come in and Sam standing, right, in his like peripheral vision, and he's like, okay, Sam, if you're in here, I can't see you, and and then he's like, oh, there you are, and like, as opposed to having the sheriff, walk into the middle of the room, have Sam be behind him and have him say that line and have him turn to get that. But anyway, it was this funny thing where it's like the staging was really awesome in one moment, and then not so much in another.
Can't nail them all.
Yeah,
that's hilarious. It happens all. I kind of have to let it go at this point because I notice all of it, and I'm just like, that's just. But man, that's you guys are both fantastic at sort of extrapolating. Like, there's just the sense of the story and picking out great moments. It's been a real pleasure chatting.
Well, Alex, do you have any, film noir, general information or anything that might relate to these films, but like in general of the genre itself? Like maybe you could give us your insights.
Sure. I think that there's something about like it's almost like ghost stories. It's like as someone who's like kind of not. I like the idea of ghost stories without really being into like actual ghosts. It's like, what does the story say, right? Like, what are the forbidden desires, like the things that like in small conversation, small talk, you never talk about like murder or revenge, but if you're telling someone about a ghost story about on the block, it's like you might casually mention those things, right? In the context of like just an anecdote, right? I like noir because in the context of an old studio film, these are so cynical. They are such cynical, suspicious films. Any social institution, they are giving a side glance at. Most politicians, most people in power are corrupt, which most institutions are very, very fragile. They're almost on like giraffe legs. And it's usually just like one person against the world, which is, I sometimes think how people secretly think, So like all of that.
And it'll feel that way when you have such, overbearing institutions, crushing you from every angle, right? It's like,
yes,
it'll feel like you are on an island all by yourself, and it's you against the world. The only way out of the gutter is to hustle like Glenn Ford.
Well, yes, absolutely. And I think writers with their salt. I heard this line years ago that says like, if you find the contradiction, you find the character, right? And it means like all of our favorite characters, a lot of the classic cinema, heroes, anti-heroes, whatever, there's a bit of a contradiction there in them somewhere, right? And noir does that all the time. It's like Mr. Soft Touch. He's the baddie, but suddenly he's got a heart of gold. Mr. Cover Up. Everyone, the small town, it's a little bit grimy underneath, right? There's all these like red herrings and twists. The inherent duality of all people. You know what I mean? That's for a studio film to be that cynical, suspicious, and kind of artful in like the abstraction of human nature is very rare for Hollywood. So, and also I've lived in cities all my life. They're all set in cities, and that's another thing that draws me to the genre. So that's just sort of my spiel on why I've fallen in love with this particular line of. I also like 80s NYC movies. I love horror. I love comedy. I love anything.
So you do love horror. You just don't really care for the ghost stories.
Let me correct. I love ghost stories on film. I love ghost stories like in real life. I don't know if I believe in this idea of specters or ghosts. It's more what they mean and represent. Like if someone tells me about like a house that's haunted, I'm not going to go put my ear to the window, but I want to find out what does that story mean and what does it say about the neighborhood, the people,
Yeah. Right. Okay. Interesting.
Because all the subtext. I love Ghost Story. I love the movie Ghost Story. And I love ghost horror films as well. So, yeah.
Excellent.
We did an episode kind of recently about gothic ghost stories, and it was like The Haunting, The Innocents, and The Shining. And I think they'd be right up your alley because all of them were kind of psychological stories where the ghost story sort of represented the tortured psyche of the main character.
I mean, that sounds very much up my alley. I would love to listen to that. There's another winter noir I really like called On Dangerous Ground. It has Robert Ryan and Ida Lupino. I went to a screening of that in New York, God, years ago, and Robert Ryan's son was in the audience, and he's like this. He's an older gentleman. He's a professor. He basically stood up and said something like, I don't really watch my dad's movies. I'm not really into film. Which is like, okay, interesting, fair enough. He's a brilliant military strategist. He teaches, I believe, at Oxford and somewhere in Oregon. Whoa. Yeah. But he said, if I could take one thing about these films, it's that a lot of it's like people struggling with identity post-war. It's a lot of just men coming back from the war, finding themselves in fucked up situations back home instead of abroad. And that's another very pared down. It's people back from the war and coping with suburban life. That's a big part of noir. Yeah.
There is a sort of a more cynical viewing of that line from Mr. Soft Touch, where it's like, what did we win, right?
Oh, yeah.
And then you see him come back to this, and he is surrounded by kids living in the gutters and everything else. His brother was ground up into a cement mixer and whatever. It's like, what the hell was all this for? And and that sort of sense of nihilism, the sense of like that you're saying that overarching sense of dread.
I hate to sound like an SAT essay, but disillusionment, perhaps?
Yeah.
There you go. You know what I mean? Like, that's the totally. Word that, if I was writing, I think that's... There's a sense of that for sure, you know what I mean?
Totally. But all, the best ones, I should say, I was going to say all of them, but I think the best ones do it with a sense of humor and a sense of irony in that sense of humor, such as... just even the title of Mr. Soft Touch, right? It's like, he's a soft touch. Like he has this hard exterior.
Did that relate specifically to the dice though?
It's gotta be.
The lingo.
It's gotta be the gambling connection somewhere.
Yeah.
It is his, the fact that you can shake him down for money easily. That's what that means essentially.
Okay.
He's a soft touch.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And I like that title alone was great. And I think one of the
title.
great stills that you shared that really sucked me into Mr. Soft Touch in particular. And I think around the time that I sort of discovered your page in general was Glenn Ford wearing the Santa outfit and smoking a cigarette or something. It was just I was like, Christmas noir. This is awesome. Who fucking knew? But I'm so glad that you're able to join us and we're able to kind of go through some of these ones, and these were some of the I think some of the better ones, and I think I don't know, months and months ago I watched Storm Warning, the Ginger Rogers and
is that the KKK?
Yeah, right, and Ronald Reagan and all this. And
Doris
it's
Day.
Okay,
yeah.
Doris Day was in it. Yeah, exactly. Okay, there's a Christmas tree in the background, but it really was kind of stretching that idea. But I think these movies in particular really kind of embodied that whole aesthetic of combining both the Christmas movie, the studio Christmas movie, as well as something a little darker.
You chose three great ones. They're people even make the argument that It's a Wonderful Life has touches of noir. Mm-hmm. I see it, you have Gloria Graham playing a femme fatale, slight blonde femme fatale, right, and she's noir royalty, so that's the loosest connection. But when you think about again, one man against everything. There's even a shootout moment. There's the distrust of the bank, right? So that you got the distrust.
If during that shootout moment, things had ended a little differently. The cops weren't whipping their bullets at him, but rather aiming,
throwing them.
Maybe that would have been a noir.
Yeah. They had the Keystone Cops doing the shooting. Yeah. Oh man, and that that's so funny because that wasn't even wasn't there some story with It's a Wonderful Life where it was totally ignored for decades and only because it was shown?
Oh yeah, no, it was a total bomb when it first came out.
Really?
And because they had fucked up the copyright registration of it, it went into the public domain. And so TV stations could run it for free, and they would just run it because of the Christmas movie, and it became a classic. And it was similar to Night of the Living Dead, where it's
right.
Night of the Living Dead wasn't necessarily a bomb when it came out the way that this one was. It's a Wonderful Life was.
But it was in public domain.
It was in public domain, and most people discovered it by watching it on TV. I mean,
yeah.
Shawshank too. It's that was a bomb when it came out, but it played on TNT endlessly for an entire generation. You're like, oh wait, this is a great movie. Just didn't recognize it at the time.
That's not where I first saw it, but that's where I have seen it every single time after that first time seeing it.
Oh, yeah.
It's on TNT at different parts.
Yeah.
And then you go up to Comedy Central, and it's Kids in the Hall, right? Or Office Space. One of the two.
There you go.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Right on. One more question I had for you was like this odd pairing of both noir and Christmas movies. I really love film noir. I had never even heard of some of these things. Where did you come across these things?
These are IMDb Advanced Search is really good for the curation purposes of the Instagram page. If you just go in Advanced Search, you can type in a keyword and click the box of a genre, say between certain years. You could really find specific, and it might even help you guys in curating future episodes. You can really make very strange connections of films based on whatever, There's a lot of for some reason, there's a whole corner of the web where it's like people that own websites that just talk about noir. So if I just Googled film noir Christmas, things published in the last couple of years, I sent it's like a 2-year limit. A lot of Googling, man. Advanced IMDb Googling. Yeah. That's how I found them. Some of them I knew.
So you're doing all the hard work, and we're just reaping the benefits. Yeah.
Hey, you know what? You guys got a cool podcast, though, and I'm happy to be on it, though. So.
Thank you.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, for sure, man.
Do you want to plug? Let us know where the audience can find you and all that.
Yeah, for sure. OnlyFilmNoir. That is the Instagram that I use. I post. Mostly classic Hollywood noir, some international, some neo-noir. And, my name's Alex. I'm a writer, comedian, and I work in PR, but I got this, don't want this to rhyme, I got a page on Film Noir. God
there
damn it. That was awful. That was just...
That's your PR training paying off right there.
Yeah, that was really well done.
That was the first thing they said on the job. They're like, everything's got to rhyme. So, yeah. So
do your time.
Exactly. Yeah, there we go. Pleasure meeting you guys, though. It's really nice
pleasure
to make
meeting
this
you.
Yeah.
Let's do this again very soon. We'd love to have you back on.
Anytime. Like I said, noir is sort of the specialty, but I go into 80s NYC, horror, comedy, all sorts of studio classics, all of it. So anything.
Awesome.
Yeah.
What before we step off? I mean, what would an 80s NYC movie be?
I have a theory that 80s NYC movies influenced how America looks at itself, whether it's Tootsie or Wall Street or Ghostbusters or When Harry Met Sally.
I didn't hear After Hours in there.
Oh my God. Yeah. I mean, After Hours, exactly.
I just watched that for the first time. I really love that movie.
Oh, it's Working Girl. Wild. I mean, so many films from the 80s sort of, I think, influenced the indie scene, influenced television, and then there's also things like Chud and Wolfen and Basket Case movies. You have all these horrors that added
Rob
this
Cohen.
seedy. I honestly think America looks at itself through the lens cinematically. 80s New York is a really good distillation of a country with great title sequences and great soundtracks, and amidst urban decay. You know what I mean?
Yeah, okay, well, I mean, you don't seem excited about this subject at all, so we probably shouldn't have you back on about this. Maybe we can set up a block of that, too.
Anytime, guys. This has been great.
That sounds great.
Go on. Oh, pal, you shouldn't talk so much.
All right, this was a fantastic episode. Next week, we will be taking a look at Dune films. Specifically, the episode is going to be called Adapting Dune. We're going to be looking at the David Lynch Dune film, the Dune miniseries that was on the Sci-Fi Channel, directed by John Harrison, and the documentary Jodorowsky's Dune, which was the attempt at making Dune by Jodorowsky, the very, very brilliant director, artsy director for sure. It would have been probably the most artsy Dune ever created. So yeah, we're going to be watching those on the next episode. We also have another special guest, if that's correct, joining us for that. And so that should be a lot of fun.
Yeah, I wanted to, bring on my buddy Daniel Ross to kind of take us through Dune. He's read it and read some of the series. couple of times. And, we kind of wanted to look at, some of the pitfalls in adapting Dune and how it was done before and how it was not done with Jodorowsky in that case. And just kind of see what makes this story so challenging.
And although we're technically watching 3 films for this as usual, we are actually watching 5 films. We have the Dune miniseries as 3 90-minute films. That's going to count as 1. So, give us a little credit and watch this next episode because we put a lot of fucking work into this one. Thank you so much for listening. Please make sure to subscribe and follow us on all the podcasts and social platforms at the Grindhouse Institute. And if you really want to give us a boost, check us out on Apple Podcasts and leave us a rating and review. It helps us to get noticed. Thanks so much, everybody. We'll be back next week.
Ciao.
Arrest doesn't solve these problems. It never has.
Disturbing the peace is the charge.
Now, is that the Christmas spirit, to take a man away from his wife on Christmas Eve?
That's tomorrow night. If he behaves himself, he'll be out by then.
Judge Fuller is a very busy man. I'd hate to bother him.
Would you do that to me again?
Yes, I certainly would.
Let's take him in, Sarge.
Oh, no, Miller. Why, policemen don't arrest people anymore in this neighborhood. These are now matters for the Family Service Division of the Borden Street Settlement House, whose fine purpose it is to hold the family together. Isn't that right, Miss Jones?
When possible.
So you see, Miller, he isn't to blame. He's only a pitiful victim of society.